welcome everyone. Welcome to a new edition of Remixing Politics and Culture with me, your host, Pam. I am so thankful that you decided to spend some time with me this Sunday evening. I have a very special show for you this evening. I've even have a special name for it. But first, a little bit about me. I am a public relations and marketing professional with a passion for social justice, voter advocacy, and culture. And tonight's show promises to be very spirited, and it's even better when the audience participates in live in real time. So tonight's show, I've named it Biden, SCOTUS, and DeSantis. Oh my! And I put a little humorous tone on it because really what's happening in our country is not very funny at this time, but it doesn't hurt to have a little sense of humor because laughter really is good medicine. So without further ado, I have just one gentleman on our panel this tonight, and I'm going to bring him up first. Let me introduce to you Mr. Ken Scott. Ken has over 40 years of experience in community engagement, 20 years in real estate sales, 16 years in broker and supervisory management, 19 years in housing, counseling, and education, and 13 years in housing case management. He is a busy man. I know him as a very dedicated servant leader in the city of Detroit. Welcome, Ken, to the show. It's so good to see you.
Thank you for having me, Pam.
Absolutely, absolutely. And next we have Dr. Rohima Mia. We go way back. We went to high school together and undergraduate together. Dr. Rohima Mia is a practicing psychiatrist in North Carolina. She is a University of Michigan grad and the Ohio State University Medical School grad. She specializes in Spravato, a treatment used for adults with major depressive orders, and TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. You would think that she'd be busy enough with all of that professional work that she does, but Dr. Mia has a very strong political interest, and she feels that her views need to be heard in the politics of today. She is the current membership officer for the North Carolina Green Party. Welcome, Dr. Rohima, to the show.
Thank you, Pam, for having me. I've never had a chance to be on your show or to watch any of your visits. I'm very excited about it, and hopefully that means I'll be a regular, maybe not on the show, but a regular watching.
Oh, absolutely. Listen, I don't discriminate. I love people to come back on the show and what have you. As you will well know, our next and last but not least is Latrice Davis. She is our regular pundit. Currently, Latrice is the senior court clerk in the Queens County Civil Court. She is a member of the Queens Community Board 6 and serves as in the Aging, Social Services, Disabilities Committee, as well as the Transportation Street Safety Committee and the Committee for Those Without Shelter. And I can only imagine from the last reports I'm hearing with all this immigration issues that you are like this right now, right?
Things are always on and popping in New York, and they're even more so now.
Yes.
I hope we get to talk about that tonight, but if not, that's okay.
We might. It's no telling what might happen tonight. And Latrice is also a former reporter with the Associated Press. Welcome back, Latrice.
As always, thank you for having me.
Absolutely, absolutely. Guys, I'm so excited that you all are here with me this evening. The first question is for each of you. And for the most part, that's how I'm doing it. And I may have something specific for each of you as well. So stay tuned. But I'm starting with Ken first, because Ken is the only dude on the show. So we're giving Ken all the first dibs at everything. So Ken, is Joe Biden too old to run for another term of president? Why or why not?
I don't think age is the thing we should be looking at. I think the experience, uh, the um, the political acumen, the policies, what have you, should be the premier things that we look at as it relates to choosing a candidate. Um, and then at the same time, uh, do we have an alternative?
Mm, okay. Okay. That's do we have an alternative?
Mhm.
Okay. Rohima, same question. Is he too old to run for president? Why or why not?
Right. I don't think that age or ageism should be a factor in any political candidate. I do agree with Ken that it has to look at what are your policies and what have you done. So the one thing about President Biden is he has like a 50-year history of what he's done as policy. So my first introduction to Joe Biden was when he was against school desegregation in the 1970s and basically said stuff like, do you want your kids going to school in the jungle? And that was a time when Black students were getting beat up, rocks thrown at them in Boston. And he was on the wrong side of that.
Mm-hmm.
Later on, he was an advocate for that crime bill that
Yeah.
skyrocketed our prison population from 500,000 to over 2 million people. He was instrumental in a number of policies. He advocated strongly for the Iraqi war. So, yeah, I think looking at his record is critical and
Mm-hmm.
see what he's done over these 50 years. And I don't think age is the main issue. I think policies and looking at someone's record is the main issue.
All right. And Latrice, same question. Why or why not? Is
The
it
short answer is no. I don't think he's too old. However, there are some caveats. As my fellow guests, Ken and Dr. Me, have already alluded to, my biggest concern is who does he have in the pipeline?
yeah.
Like, you know, I mean, assuming that I live long enough to reach 80, and I hope I do, I
Mm-hmm.
don't see myself working.
Mm-hmm.
But again, it's a matter of choice. So no, he's not too old to run for president, but that begs the question, who does the Democratic Party have in the pipeline,
Mm-hmm.
assuming that he wins next year?
Mm-hmm.
And this goes to Ken's point, and this is my biggest concern. Like when I voted for Biden in the 2020 election, I mean, he's a nice guy, but
Mm-hmm.
yeah, his record is not so great. But
Mm-hmm.
I voted for him not because he would be a great president. I voted for him because there's no way in hell I was voting for his opponent. Number one, and
Yeah.
number two, which was even more important, not voting at all wasn't an option.
Right.
So that's how Biden got my vote. It wasn't so much, I think he can lead us to the promised land. It's more like, okay, talk about the lesser of two evils.
Mm-hmm.
So once again, I don't think he's too old, but that just puts a spotlight on how the Democratic Party hasn't prepared anyone. I mean, and you see the same thing playing out in California with Senator Feinstein.
Oh God.
She's knocking on 90. She may or may not have her mental faculties. Who knows? But the
Mm-hmm.
fact that she was in the Senate for as long as she's been there, and there's no one really positioned to take her place,
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't reflect well on the Democratic Party. So that's my answer to your question.
Yeah,
And
I
Sam-
think that there really needs to be much more of that type of discussion going on about transitioning. Look at Auntie Maxine. Look at Nancy Pelosi stepped down, but we have a lot of octogenarians in high places that we really need to be able to have somebody be mentored or tutored, being tutored to know where all the skeletons are, how to raise the money, what are the secrets, all of that type of stuff. But if Biden prayerfully, if he wins again, because we really don't have a choice, it is a perfect opportunity for a lot of Gen Zs. I think I see it as an opportunity for a lot of young people to say, look, grandpa. And maybe they have the whole team. A campaign saying I'm voting for Gramps or something like that. They need to really step up and demand their place
But they also got to be coming forth with solutions, or at the very least, ideas. I think that's another issue. Like, I mean, like, okay, when I joined the community board, like, I never claimed to be a savior, and I don't have all the answers, but I do want to be a part of the solution. That was pretty much my, I don't even want to say campaign speech, because it wasn't a campaign, but when I applied, that's what I said in my statement, that I want to be a part of the solution. Anyone can sit on the sidelines and complain, but okay, what are we doing about it? So I figured I would step up, and that's how I do it, like whether it's volunteering or what have you. And now with Biden, again, assuming that he wins re-election, I hope he does, but again, that doesn't say much about the Democratic Party, that we're pinning our hopes on an octogenarian.
So I have a question. There are two other people running for president in the Democratic Party. There's Marianne Williamson and Robert Kennedy Jr. But the Democratic Party is saying they're not going to hold any debates. They're not going to give other people who are not 80 years old a chance to even present their ideas to the public, to say, I feel like maybe I have a better solution, a better plan, a better set of ideas than Joe Biden. And it's sort of a self-fulfilling prophecy if you say someone's not viable, quote unquote, if you don't even give them the opportunity to present their ideas on the debate stage. How is that democratic? How is that democracy when we don't get a chance to even hear other people running within the Democratic Party, never mind third parties, which just don't even get the free advertisement that the two major parties get on mainstream media all the time. But even within the Democratic Party, they're not going to allow some kind of debate. They're not going to allow any kind of anything, so that we don't have an opportunity to see if maybe somebody, the Democratic voters who supposedly are the people that are choosing the candidates, have a chance to weigh in. So I'm questioning whether the Democratic Party actually believes in the democratic process when they will not allow that to happen.
Pam, let me say this.
Say something.
It first and foremost is traditional when you have a standing candidate of Biden's magnitude that you not entertain anyone else. The Republicans aren't going to do it with Trump. They may hold the candidates may enter the race, but at the same time, they're not going to allow primaries to happen or individuals to come in that aren't of the Republican persuasion. The other thing that I want to touch on is the succession plan. Given the fact that we have Biden for one more term, if he were to win, like Latrice said, I'm sorry, Latrice said, there is one more term. We haven't entertained the thought of another individual entering the race. Who's the succession plan going to? Who is next up? And we as Black people in our communities, especially in our community, we don't pass the baton.
That's right.
In the state of Michigan, we have a situation where our present senator, Debbie Stabenow, is stepping down. She's already given the gavel to Melissa Slotkin. Okay. I don't know if you all have heard that Hill Harper has planted himself in the Detroit area and is planning on running against Melissa Slotkin.
Oh, he's about Hill Harper, the actor?
Hill Harper, the actor.
I thought he was in New York.
No, he is here. He is firmly planted here. Okay. But at the same time, our Black community is not happy with the selection of Melissa Slotkin. If that's the case and what have you, we've already lost out on Black leadership in the 13th congressional district, where we have another person that is not of African American heritage that is occupying that seat.
Right.
We came in with 4 candidates, although maybe up to the standard that we would select. However, they were competing against each other,
Mhm.
and they were taking the same constituencies, or they were attracting the same constituencies, and the vote was split. And we know when we split the vote and what have you, we usher in someone else that is not vested in our community and willing to represent us to the best of their ability.
It's a tactic as old in time, otherwise known as divide and conquer.
Absolutely.
So
Absolutely.
what about
And when you've
the
done that, and
almost
when you've done that,
50% of
you
people
give them
that
the
don't vote?
opportunity to come in and run the table on us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
So what about all the almost 50% of people who don't vote in elections? Do they not matter at all? Because
they
the
matter
reason
too.
they do not vote is because they don't feel like they have a choice. And I'm curious about this language of secession, as if somehow it's a monarchy that people secede to. What we're talking about is a democracy, and people should be able to stand on a debate stage and say, "These are my policies. This is what I believe in. This is why you should vote for me." There should not be some succession in the Democratic Party like they're running the show. There are other people out there that have ideas about things. I represent a party that we're on the ballot here in North Carolina, but we don't get that kind of free advertising. We have a lot of ideas that are different than the Democratic Party, but since we don't get that hearing, people don't get to hear it, and then we're deemed not viable. So one of the things that our party is planning to do is to run candidates in these unopposed districts. So there are many places all over the country where Democratic Party candidates are in office, or Republican candidates in office in district where nobody runs against them because people don't given up. They don't given up on running against anybody, and they don't give the people in those districts a chance to have a choice. They just say, "This is the only choice you got. There's nobody else running." And that is not democracy. So I'm really confused about secession, as if that's a democratic principle.
Well, to be fair, I never used that word.
This way, secession is not a principle, and it's not a means to do a royal succession in the event that you're thinking about the kingdom in Britain, Great Britain.
Well, that's how the language sounds. That's all I'm saying.
What I mean by succession is that next person up. Maybe they have the financing. Maybe they have the experience. Maybe they have the policies in mind that are going to make a difference in our community and what have you. But at the same time, maybe it was split like it was in the city of Detroit over the 13th Congressional District. And at that point in time, it doesn't usher in anyone else other than someone outside of people that are going to be vested in our respective communities. Succession plan means the next person up, basically. Not that they are entitled.
Not entitlement.
Well, it feels like that when no one runs against anybody, when you don't have a debate, when you don't allow the people to choose. So all I'm saying is that maybe people, the 45% of people don't vote, might choose to go to the polls if they felt like they had a real choice. So my philosophy is, when you vote for less evil, you still end up with evil. That's why we're still deporting just as many people at the border. That's why the standard of living has gone down for the majority of people. That's why mostly what our money is spending, more than half of the budget nationally is spent on the military, policing, building jails. It's not spent on public housing. It's not built on health care. It's not built on providing education. So if we're not spending money,
but at the same time, it's still a two-party system.
And no, it's not.
I have a question for you, Dr. Meyer. How does not voting help?
Okay.
Yeah, it is technically
how does not voting help?
And I don't see a Green Party garnering the support.
We can't if we don't get free advertising on mainstream media like the two parties get.
Okay, but here's my question, Dr. Meyer. How does not voting help?
We don't get the funding that the other two parties get.
Okay, time out one at a time. Latrice, what were you saying?
No, I was saying, how does not voting help? I mean, you say that the people who don't come up to vote, they don't feel like they have a choice. But how does not voting help?
Hey,
I mean, again, I understand your frustration with the lack of choices, but again,
but why don't we have election day as a holiday like a lot of countries do?
That would
So we
be
got
Well,
poor
I think that's
people that have to
I
work
want to
2 or
answer
3
that.
jobs to make a living. They got
Okay.
to take care of their families. We make voting restrictions so that you can't vote. I mean, all these, once the Voting Rights Act got gutted several years ago by that Supreme Court, and nobody in the Democratic Party or the Republican Party has done anything to fix that. They're making all these restrictions. In Georgia, they don't even let you, if you're standing in a long line, give somebody a bottle of water. So all I'm saying is that poor people and people with limited resources are going to choose. Do I go to a job so I can pay my rent? Or do I go to a poll and vote for 2 people that ain't going to do anything for me, has done
Well, I
nothing
think
for me?
This is the thing.
Okay.
What's your solution?
I wanted to answer Dr. Mia's question. I know in terms of election day being a holiday, it's a state by state thing. Here in New York, it is a holiday, and my employer gives us the day off. Work is shut down. We are closed. School is closed. So in New York State, it is a holiday.
Not here in the Confederacy. Not here in the Confederacy, where Black people, half the population in South Carolina, hardly hold any elective offices.
North Carolina,
in the old Confederacy, they still doing Confederacy style laws and making
because
it
you all
work.
just relinquished the
Like
House
DeSantis.
seat. You all just relinquished the House seat.
Oh
Right?
God.
Didn't relinquish it, but the
Okay, it is not
changed
relinquishment. It is this undemocratic policies that those Republicans and Democrats who refuse to do enough to stop it have put into place. And places like Florida has gone full on crazy. And
Yeah.
that used to be a purple state. Now it's full on red.
But North Carolina was purple too until we screwed up in the midterms. We screwed up in the midterms and we didn't go and vote because it wasn't a presidential election. And for the first time in 100 years, the Republicans took over the House. And it's been a mess since.
They happened several years ago.
I say to my southern viewers and anyone who lives in the southern states, you gotta fight. It's that simple. You have to fight.
Yeah.
Again, I'm in New York. So I can't, I mean, in terms of David's question, why don't they make it a national holiday? That's a valid question. I don't know. But in New York, it is a holiday.
If you want to stay in power for 50 years, like a Pelosi and a Feinstein, then you don't try hard to let other people run against you.
Okay, but what can the Green Party do differently than the two-party system
we
that
can't
we've
do
already set up?
anything when
And
we're
the mere
locked
fact that
out.
we already
Okay, one
have
thing, we're not
a
corrupt like those
constituency
two
behind the
parties. We
Democratic
do
Party.
not take money from corporations. We do not take money from private equity firms.
And that's the
We
reason
do
why
not take,
you're
you know
not
what?
heard.
Exactly, because we're not a corrupt party.
That's the
We're
reason
based
why
on our
you're not heard.
principles.
And
Right,
you won't
because
be
if
heard
only
unless
rich
you spend
people's
some money.
voice are being
And
heard.
you don't have much of that
But
much
that's
of a
why,
consensus in
isn't
order
that
to
why,
make a difference.
but shouldn't elections be publicly financed then, so it's fair?
Okay, get that past the U.S. House and Senate.
Well, I'm going to say in New York, we have the
all those
campaign finance
multimillionaires
board.
in there won't do it. 75% of Congress are worth $1 million or more. It's 75% of the U.S. population millionaires. So how is that representative? Let me tell you something else. Why is the size of the House the same as been for the last 80 years? Have we grown as a country? Why haven't we changed that? Right, because people stay in power and they're least representative. So there's a lot of undemocratic processes.
And who changes that rule?
The Democratic Republican rule. Right, the Democratic Republican parties can do it because
whether
they're in
you
power.
are a Democratic House or Senate or you're a Republican House and Senate, no one is brave enough to change that law.
Right.
Or that rule.
Right, because they don't want a real challenge from people like the Green Party because they're afraid that once people get a fair hearing, if we get a fair hearing without taking corporate money and rich people money because we are not corrupt, then they would be afraid. That's why North Carolina, the Democratic Party tried to keep us off the ballot. They claim we didn't get enough signatures. We had to file a lawsuit. We had to file a lawsuit to get on the ballot because the Democratic Party illegally tried to keep us off.
Well, your own House member changed parties, so that puts you all in a deficit right there.
She was a plant. She was a plant. That was a strategy by the Republicans.
Well, she just came out today and said she's not joining the Republican Party. I'm assuming you're referring to Arizona Senator Kirsten Sinema, but
no. We're talking about North Carolina.
No, North Carolina.
Okay.
But that just proves that they're not that different. But I'm saying is, why if the Democratic Party weren't afraid of a challenge, would they go to file a lawsuit against us to say that we didn't get enough signatures to get on the ballot? Now, they lost that case because it was bogus. But if you were not afraid of another challenge, you would have publicly funded, publicly financed elections, and then we would get more people that are able to run or actually represent the majority of the country, which are not millionaires.
Yeah,
which are regular people.
Okay, it's always good to talk about the principle of the thing, but at the same time, the principal does not vote. And once the principal votes and everything, we can have this conversation. But right now, it's a two-party system that we're adhering to because we can't change the dynamics of the House and Senate. If we could change the House and the Senate and to think about something that the majority may want as opposed to what the minority may want, then we can make a difference.
I'm so glad our brothers and sisters from the 50s, 40s, and 60s didn't believe that. When there were no Black people in office, they went out on the streets and said, we need to have the right to vote and we need to do that. So I submit to you. What they did was what we can still do that. They had
less power at that time and exercised it, and we have more power and don't.
Because we funnel all our energy into the Democratic Party instead of being out in the streets.
Well, here's the thing. I want to piggyback off what David just commented on, because I think that gets to the heart of this spirited debate that we're having. Money.
Yeah.
I mean, it costs money to launch a campaign. It costs money to sustain a campaign. And even if you win a congressional seat or mayor's race or a councilman's race, you still need money. Where's that money coming from? Now, I think the parties are, I think corruption is a part of it. I mean, especially if you look at people like Clarence Thomas and Harlan Crow, but I think it goes beyond that. It goes to lack of will to change things, because a lot of politicians have become entrenched in the system. It's as one of my friends would call it, a benevolent dictatorship. Like there's no incentive to change because they're reaping the benefits. But money is at the heart of all this.
Let's go to David's comment. Money, money, money. And like Latrice said, when was the last time anyone on this screen donated $100 to their particular candidate?
I have.
Yeah, I've donated to I can't say I've donated $100.
But I bet
I can't say that.
That money I got $100. So does that mean their voice doesn't
help
count?
That client, that legislator, or that person.
I don't know why that's relevant. If you don't have $100, that means your voice don't count. So
I don't think that's what he's saying, or at least that's not how I'm taking it.
Corporations have free speech.
The same holds true for the Green Party.
No, I'm just saying that, but we don't get the free advertising on mainstream media. But also,
and you won't.
Right. So that's undemocratic.
You don't have the money.
That's undemocratic.
You don't have the money.
Right. And that's undemocratic because most people don't have the money. So you're saying rich people get to decide what happens in this country. And you're right, they do. That's
Haven't they always?
Everything.
Yeah, I was going to say, that's not exactly a revelation.
For a long time. That's why white people control everything.
When was the last time reparations made a decision?
Well, listen, that's a whole nother subject, and we've had shows on that too. But listen, let's change the subject. We're going to get on to something else. Okay, the Supreme Court of the United States, SCOTUS, technically self-governs itself. Who the heck thought that was a good idea? That's crazy. Whoever thought that was a good idea?
Well, here's the thing, like Dr. Mia talked about the word corruption. She mentioned that a lot. Yeah. And I would say if corruption is taking place, it's taking place within the judicial system, because the Republicans were all about stacking the courts. They were playing the long game, whereas the Democrats were not. And that's why this country is in the state that it's in. Now, if you look at someone like Clarence Thomas, he's been bought and sold and he doesn't even realize it. Or maybe he does and he just doesn't care.
He doesn't care. Latrice, here's my question to you on this subject. Your thoughts on John Roberts. It's his court, so he's supposed to right the ship. That's what
Yes.
that's
He
what I,
is the Chief Justice. That is his responsibility. And right now he's abdicated. Since we're talking about succession and when royalty, he's abdicated. Because my thing is, okay,
All right,
like
well,
you
let me
said,
say
he's
this.
minding the store. Because clearly, again, Clarence Thomas has been bought and sold. And here's the thing. I don't think he's the only judge who's been bought and sold. He's just the most blatant, the most obvious one. But I don't think he's the only one by any means.
no, because Robert's
I wouldn't be surprised if Roberts has been bought and sold.
his wife just made over 10 million, but with some other firm that
Absolutely, absolutely.
Yeah, but I mean, like, okay, again, I wouldn't be surprised if he's bought and sold. I wouldn't be surprised if Justice Samuel Alito's bought and sold. Amy Coney Barrett bought and sold. Brett Kavanaugh bought and sold. Neil Gorsuch bought and sold. I mean, I wouldn't be surprised at all by any of this. And that to me is an indictment on us.
If,
Yeah.
if
Well, let me ask
corruption
you-
is
let me-
legal, is
Let
it
me
still
let me share
okay?
this analogy with you all. Let
Okay,
me share this analogy.
okay, share
When
the
we were smaller and we were doing something bad, our parents spanked us, right?
yeah.
All right. If that's the case and everything, who's the spanking body in the Supreme Court?
That's the problem. The Supreme Court
Okay,
is
'cause
spanking
even though
body.
there's a separation of the three judicial, three
Branches of government.
the United States judicial, legislative, and executive, who
Right.
checks them? Who checks them? Who gave them autonomy? Those white slave owners in the 1700s that said, there's no way in the world they're going to act like this right now.
Mm-hmm.
Several
Right.
hundred years later.
Well,
Okay.
yeah.
That is
So
why the
we
vast
need-
majority,
we need
every
a
other
spanking
country in the
body.
world
We
are
need a
allowed to
spanking
rewrite their
body
constitution.
that's going to hold them accountable.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I think that in terms of what you mentioned, Dr. Me, about rewriting the Constitution, it's a lot that needs to be rewritten.
But I'm just saying that is what every other
And it's
country
not
does.
gonna
We
pass.
don't feel beholden to that. And in this idea that somehow just because something's been a way doesn't mean we can't change it. We've changed things, but we haven't changed it depending on some politicians to do it for us.
Wait.
It's about willpower, lack of
No,
willpower.
it's about action.
For
in
us
the
to change
street.
things, we have to know how power is being wielded in those three branches. And if we don't know how the power is being wielded, then we can shout off different things that we want to do. But at the same time, there's a process of doing it. And at the same time, if you're not educated on the process and everything, then you know it can't be done. So
I know the process is corrupt. And that's why when Black people couldn't vote in the South, they didn't depend on the Jim Crow process to get their way. They said, I'm going to boycott these buses. I'm going to get out on the streets. I'm going to do that. When women couldn't even get a credit card without their husband's name, when they didn't have an abortion, they went out on the streets.
That's right.
Gay people said, I should have the right and benefits of marriage just like everybody else. They got out on the streets. So what I'm saying is that going into a corrupt institution and thinking that that's the way to get power and change, the corrupt institution is bought and paid for by the oligarchy.
How does that affect or impact government? Tell me how that is done.
The government's corrupt.
Well, I have a question. Okay. Here's a question, Dr. Mia.
Time out. Okay, so let's see. My next question was, Rohima, your thoughts on SCOTUS. Matt, by the way, David is talking about we need to wake up and start a new party. Rohima is in the other party, David. She's in the Green Party.
So my thoughts on SCOTUS is that there are mechanisms to expand the court, which Biden and the Democrats could put in place, but they ain't got the courage to do it. They don't have the courage to do it.
They don't have
they could put laws in place, but they won't do it because they're happy with the system as well.
That is not true.
So that is why it hasn't changed. That's why the Democratic Party has spent years doing nothing to change it.
Well, I have a question, Dr. Mia.
Just like we were told that once certain people get in office, they were going to codify Roe v. Wade into the law. And then 3 months after getting in office, said that's not a priority. Now look where we're at.
Rahima, are you familiar how bills are made? how
Yes,
legislated
you know
it,
what? I watch all those cartoons to look. Don't insult me.
Okay,
I
but
know
understand
how
this.
bills are made, but
Understand
also
this.
know that we have corrupt politicians,
Understand this.
and I
If
understand
you
that
understand the
money.
process and everything, you know it's not just blowing smoke and talking about it
It
on
isn't
how you
blowing
feel.
smoke, but it's democrat. If we are in a democracy, then the people should have the means to speak, and that's why you need publicly funded campaigns.
Keep
which
in
they
mind
have.
that in states like North Carolina that have
The,
are leaning purple or leaning red,
oh, they are red. And I
which
will
is
say this:
which
it's
is a
the old
minority,
Confederacy.
which is a
It's the
minority
old
led state,
Confederacy.
which is a minority led state. And when you're talking about the population of the United States, you're just a trickle of what the population is.
Most of the population lives on the coast. But you know why there's all these Republicans in office? It's because it's an undemocratic Senate. Why do two senators from every state, when some states got more cows than people?
What are you going to change about it? What
we should abolish the Senate and expand the House. That'd be more
representative. Okay, whoa. Okay.
Okay, I want to hear. Wait. Ooh, y'all. I knew this was going to be like this.
It's very interesting. But I do have some questions for Dr. Mia in all seriousness. So Dr. Mia, first and foremost, you're talking about abolishing the Senate, expanding the House. Realistically, but realistically, what plans or ideas do the Green Party have in regards to that, to address that issue? And also, what is the Green Party doing on the local level? Well, not just federal, not even state, but on the local level with city races, with county races.
I'm gonna tell you what we're doing. Okay, we're a small party because we don't take corrupt money from corporations so that makes it harder. That's true. But I was just at an event to stop Cop City in Atlanta. Because as far as I'm concerned, destroying a forest around a mostly Black community to build a huge police structure with a mini city to militarize the police, where police all over the state, including the apartheid state of Israel, sending their IDF soldiers here to learn how to conduct urban warfare against Black people and brown people and other people around the world, is not something we should tolerate. So I've
never said it should be, but you've done everything except answer my question. But you haven't answered my question. What plans does the Green Party have to carry out what you said about abolishing the Senate and expanding the House? Where is your presence on the local level?
We have to have an equal opportunity to present our ideas. And because we have a corrupt media that refuses to let us be, I'm just telling you, the corrupt Democratic Party tried to keep us off the ballot. We had to file a lawsuit to prevent them from doing that. So why is that okay? Why is it okay? Why are you saying that we're the problem when we have to have all these obstacles in our way to even
I don't think you're the problem at all.
Yes, you are. I don't think you're the problem. Well, we're doing what we can to get people in our party, but we don't have the money because we refuse to take that corrupt money. And so this was one platform, thank you, Pam, and other places where we can come out and speak about what we do. We go out into the community. We partner with mutual aid organizations, other things that we believe are important. So we are straight up anti-capitalist, anti-imperialist, eco-socialist organization. We do not believe that the majority, that there are millions of people homeless and then rich people can walk around hoarding cash, literally hoarding cash, which is part of the reason we have inflation. More than 50% of inflation is due to profit taking.
Okay, Raheem, let me ask you this.
In order for us to get these ideas out of here,
what legislation has the Green Party enacted or
how can we do that?
Impacted in any way?
How can we do that? Even Bernie Sanders have hardly been able to do it because he's been.
Okay, then
Bernie Sanders isn't in the Green Party.
I know he's not, but what I'm saying is he's been in there a long time, but because he has to deal with all those corrupt politicians that are around him, they prevent him from doing that. But instead of looking at the corruption of the Democratic Party and looking at the corruption of the Republican Party, when they work together bipartisan to foment war around the world, which to me, bipartisan means one party rule. Why is that okay? But then preventing a small party in the North Carolina, why would you spend hundreds of thousands or $1 million to keep us off the ballot if you weren't worried about us?
Rahima, who did you, and I hate to ask this question, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Who did you vote for in the last
I didn't vote for any capital. I didn't vote for either of those capitalist party. I voted for Green Party candidate.
So you just basically wasted your vote.
Well, that's your opinion. But I
Well,
don't think it's a waste.
I'm not in the business of telling you about how to vote. I'm not going to go there.
I don't believe that voting for evil gets you anything but evil. I vote for people that I support in their policies.
You may as well have stayed home, though.
What? No. People who stay home allow whoever wins win. And those people have legitimate reasons for not winning. That's how voting works. I know how voting works. Your vote goes to who it goes to. It's a simple concept.
It does not work like that.
Yes, it does. Whoever you vote for goes to that person.
Whatever is the most popular policy.
Yeah, okay. So the popular policy is not to have universal health care. Every poll
is the one that wins.
Every poll says the American people want universal publicly funded health care. Why don't we have it? The people want it. So why don't we have it?
Because we don't have a majority in the House and the Senate.
Joe Biden said while he was campaigning, even if it was passed by the whole House, he would have vetoed it.
Again, let me go back to how do you make a bill?
You know what? That is speaking to me like a child, and I don't appreciate it.
So
what I'm going to say to you is, that Joe Biden said
in the process.
Joe Biden said,
the process does not yield
if the majority of the House and Senate, if they pass the universal health care bill,
the process does not yield because of what we want personally.
Yeah, well, it does yield to what rich people want, because apparently you're okay with rich people deciding the policy.
Democracy earlier.
This isn't a democracy; it's an oligarchy. It is not a democracy.
Or not.
Okay, Ken and Rahima, time out. Okay, so I never got really the question answered from Rahima about SCOTUS because we kind of went back.
Because they're corrupt. There's nothing you can do about it. So all you can do is pack the court.
Pam, give me the question.
Okay, let me ask you the question. Should we expand the Supreme Court? Should it get expanded? Is that the answer?
Who are you asking?
I'm asking you, Ken. That's your question.
No. And the reason being is I'm fine with what has been done if it had been done adequately to the extent where it was following the Constitution the way it was meant to be. But at the same time, it was not. It presently is not. The Supreme Court is out of balance because we didn't vote and our president didn't put that as a priority in order to get Supreme Court justices while we had the opportunity. And I want to go back to Obama. I want to go back to Biden now that has an opportunity to put people in specific positions within the judicial system.
You can't.
Whatever reason, it is not happening because we don't have the numbers to put those people in that position.
Well, here's the problem. Since you mentioned Obama, this all goes back to 2016 when Scalia died and Mitch McConnell stalled Garland's nomination. We'll never that's a sad case of what could have been because we'll never know.
I agree with you wholeheartedly. But Latrice, let me say it this way. And you mentioned it earlier on when you came on to the show. We were playing checkers while they were playing chess.
I was, yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We should have been filling up the court with higher nominees, so they would have had to pull from that pool of candidates. But at the same time, since we neglected to do so, then we have fallen prey to what we presently have now.
Yeah.
Now, all of them ain't gonna live in perpetuity. Okay, some of them gonna die. But
they're all going to die. But the fact that Trump has 3 Supreme Court
within the next 4 years, 2 of them are at least going to be off that court for whatever reason, health-wise, death-wise, whatever. I ain't wishing nothing bad on them. It's just odds. But at the same time, we have to have a Democratic president and a House and a Senate, specifically a Senate, because the Senate makes that choice. If we have a majority in the Senate, then we can affect the change in the Supreme Court. But at the same time, we as Negroes, Blacks, African Americans, however you want to call ourselves, have to get out to the polls and vote in strong numbers so we have choices that we didn't have during Obama's administration or that one person in between.
But, okay, so you mentioned voting. Look at the work of Stacey Abrams. I mean, she should not. I mean, the fact that when she ran for governor of Georgia in 2018, she lost, but it was a close loss. The fact that she went backwards in 2022, in light of all the work she did down there, like she has the receipts. Mm-hmm. And the fact that she got even fewer votes the second time around, and I do believe she's going to run again in 2026. That's what my gut tells me. Given her history, she's going to run again because Kemp is term limited. But like that should not have happened.
But one of the problems we have is that once these guys get into power the way they're doing, they're gerrymandering. So it's next to impossible. That's what happened in Texas. I really believe Beto would have won. But it's so gerrymandered. That's what's happening to us in North Carolina. And we're about to get shown enough choke now. I mean,
well, here's the thing. Cruz is up for re-election next year. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah. Loretta Thomas Walker says, if a substantial number of Black Americans support the Green Party, perhaps the Democrats will keep their promises to Black voters. Another example of a Black congregation did back in fiscal year 2016. I don't know what she's.
Well, but you know what? She's right. We don't hold the Democratic Party accountable for their lack of action. Biden went into office and they all said, we're going to raise the minimum wage. Then they let the person that doesn't have elected office say, well, no, you can't do that. When the Republicans had control, said some crap, they just didn't listen to her. And they did what they wanted to do. So what I'm saying is that there was no reason they couldn't pass it. They just refused to do it. Yeah. They say he's the most union president, and then he went ahead and threw the rail workers under the bus. Even though he was able, he could by executive order give rail workers those sick days. Mm-hmm. But he has not done it. Why can't he do it by executive order? By executive order, he can give him a second. But he can do it.
There. The democracy says the numbers weren't there.
So when Obama had a majority of 60 votes and he could have passed universal health care, he chose to pass a Republican health care plan that still keeps people mired in debt, going into bankruptcy for health bills, and in the highest number. This is not even a thing in other countries. Because
you consider Obama a Republican health care plan?
It was created by Romney and the Heritage Foundation, which is the Heritage Foundation is a Republican-funded foundation, and by Mitt Romney did it in Massachusetts. Oh, hell yeah, it was a Republican plan. He could have done universal health care.
Do you understand the reason why Obama ran it through the legislature as opposed to the court system or
but he had the majority in the House and Senate, 60 votes.
And at the same time, he couldn't get it passed without some kind of support.
He didn't have the support of his own party?
The numbers.
He didn't have the support of his own party.
Are you familiar with the democratic process?
Yes. And he didn't have the numbers when he had 60 senators and the majority of the House.
Jesus.
How was that not enough?
I keep saying this. Go back to how to pass a bill, okay?
He had the numbers. He refused to put up a bill that the majority of people wanted.
If you don't know how to pass a bill or legislation, then you're going to forever be.
If you don't have the courage to stand up for the right thing for the majority of people, you're not going to get anything either.
And how many
voters, for where we are
how many voters did the Green Party turn out last year?
Oh my gosh. Will you stop talking about that? Because we're small and we're not corrupt And if
And
we
you're
were
not going to
corrupt,
get any bigger.
yeah, as long as we have people who don't have the courage of their convictions,
You're not
and
going to get any
and
bigger.
keep doing the same thing over and over again, voting for those hapless Democrats and expecting different results. That's called crazy in my business.
Okay, they're affecting
Doing the
change.
same thing over and over
They're
again,
affecting change,
expecting
and your
different
voice is not
results.
being heard. Which one is being more effective?
But you know what, Ken? I'm gonna tell you this. In many ways, I think that a lot of, just from looking on social media as much as I do, I think that there are a lot of disenfranchised, or I should say disappointed, Black people, particularly young Black people, who and Generation Z period, that are just disgusted with how things are going. How
And that's understandable.
they don't
And,
feel that the
and
Democrat
how do you,
is
Tim, let me ask you this: how do you expect to change something if you're not actively engaged in the process?
well, they're getting actively engaged in the process, and that's
Okay,
what I'm hoping
and
that
their numbers have to justify that.
I think Ken's remarks are in reference to the Green Party, not Generation Z.
well, I'm talking about Generation Z changing things, disrupting things, period.
Well, I think they're doing
They
that now.
change things a great deal. If you look at the last election, they changed things a great deal. Where
Yeah.
their voice was heard, their votes were counted, and the Green Party wasn't.
Well, but
Because there's undemocratic laws that prevent the Green Party from getting on the ballot. And those were created by the Democrats and Republicans.
Why don't you join the Democratic Party and make an impact? Therefore, you can split off.
I'm not going to be in a corrupt capitalist party that is warmongering all over the world, trying to get us in World War III. I care about survival, and that crazy party is trying to get us in World War III.
Well,
have you ever played solitaire?
That's a matter of opinion.
Have you ever played solitaire?
When you put 800 bases all over the world and threaten other nuclear powered nations, then I think we're on the brink of nuclear war.
And the thing is, you know what? For all this money we're spending on military and all that, we don't even have to worry about any bombs throwing, because we're destroying ourselves. From
no housing, no health care, no clean energy, no underfunded schools. Yeah, we spend all our money on military, policing, and jails.
No, I'm talking about the gun situation. We're killing each other.
There's another mass shooting.
Right.
It's like it's become this national. It's become like a normal thing.
But if it's normal to kill people in other parts of the world, then you live in a violent culture that thinks doesn't respect life. Black people shot down just for being black. So why do you think
that's not
anybody gonna respect?
What's gonna change it?
I'll
tell you who's not gonna change it: the Democratic and Republican Party.
Is anything gonna change it by tomorrow?
No, that's silly.
But that's why you have to stress accountability.
Anything gonna be changed by next year?
Ken, the only
we
thing
could be in World War III by next year. That's possible.
I hope not.
We could have change by next year if enough people get on the streets and do something about it. That's
on the streets. That's where we need to be.
We have to
Okay.
do economic stuff. Now let's get to the next subject. Good grief.
Okay.
We have been, okay. The last one that I had, Florida Governor DeSantis, also known as the Satan.
What?
I call him the Satan.
I call him Little Hitler.
You know, the thing about him, everybody says, oh, he's just another Trump. No, he's far more dangerous than Trump.
He's worse.
He's far more dangerous than Trump because he's educated and he's smart. And he knows the law. And that's what makes him far more dangerous. His feud with Disney all began with the quote unquote don't say gay bill. Florida has had a long special agreement with Disney. Walt Disney did it, that they had all of this acreage, and therefore they created their own little fiefdom of rules and stuff for these cities that they controlled, right? And so because the CEO of Disney criticized the Satan for about his sex education, banning certain classes, banning books and all of that, he said he decided to punish Disney. He literally got on the podium and says, oh, they thought they had this until perpetuity. So he handpicked a governorship to try to take Disney down and say, no, you can't have all of this property. You can't rule it this way. You can't do this. You can't do that. And it's just been a mess. And so now they're going to be in court litigating this stuff. But so this Disney says that DeSantis has been discriminating against them on their freedom to speak, their First Amendment right, even though they're a corporation, that they're still held under that privilege. Latrice, what do you think about that? Who do you got money on, DeSatan or Disney?
Disney.
You got.
Well, I'm gonna say Disney for obvious reasons. What DeSantis is doing, he's basically planting the seeds and laying the groundwork to take what he's doing in Florida, take it national and possibly global if he gets his way.
Absolutely.
And he goes against everything I believe in and stand for. And even though I don't live in Florida, I visit the state and my oldest brother lives there, as you know.
Yeah.
And we have a running joke about DeSantis. But he's not going to win because, well, I would say precedent for starters.
Yeah.
I mean, if he wins, it sets a dangerous precedent. And I think, and rest assured, the rest of the country is paying attention, even though we have a whole bunch of other things going on. There's a lot of things going on in New York, as you know. We are paying attention what's going on down there.
I don't know.
We have to.
Close enough attention because that brings me to another point. The NAACP there is talking about, putting a travel warning for Florida. And I'm like, what's a travel warning? They understand economics. Do not spend your money there. Do not.
Okay, and that's all well and good. But then my question is, what about the Black people who live there?
Well, the same thing that happened in Alabama and all those other places. The Black people were the ones that made the difference. Yes. They pulled and they didn't go on the buses or whatever. And the bus transportation impacted them more than anybody. We have got to go back to the old way.
We got to get organized and we got to strategize because unlike New York, Florida's mass transit system, I don't want to say it's non-existent, but it's definitely not comparable. Like in Florida, you do need a car to get around.
I mean, that's
so but the Black people of Florida, they got to figure out a way to get to make their voices heard and make their feelings known. Because the fact that this dude was just reelected last year, I still can't wrap my head around it, and neither can my brother. And all he said to me is, I didn't vote for him. I was like, well, he's still your governor.
I'm not talking about transportation in the literal sense that like we did way back when with the Montgomery bus boycott. I'm talking about economics. Disney World, don't go. Any other parks that they have, don't go. It has to, we have to do something. But here's my problem. Where's the NAACP? Where is the national NAACP? Where are they?
They're telling you to vote for Democrats. So let me say something. I like the way you call Disney a fiefdom because that whole deal was kind of a fiefdom anyway.
It is.
But I will say this, that I think Disney's going to win only because they got more money than DeSantis. Two, I think if you're going to pick on a corporation, pick one nobody likes. Pick a health insurance corporation because then he would have had some support behind them. But don't pick a corporation that people kind of have a nice feeling about, even though their workers had to threaten to go on strike at Disney because they didn't want to raise their wages. 96% of them voted to go on strike, and Disney had to relent because Disney, even though it's one of our top 6 media companies on the ESPN, ABC, and all these different things, they didn't want to pay their workers some money. But what comes right down to it, the only thing that's kept Disney afloat during the pandemic were those parks. And that their Disney Plus is losing money, ESPN, all these others paying less, so they couldn't afford to lose their frontline workers. So they paid them what they asked for after trying to claim they couldn't afford it. Of course, they can afford it. Yeah. Most CEOs make 600, 700 times what their workers make, which nobody needs. That's absurd. That's obscene. That's ridiculous.
Yes.
And that wasn't true in the 60s or the 50s when the highest tax rate was in the 90s.
It was
so
not.
people got rich when the highest tax rate was in the 90s. But we cared about social helping people, like having things for folks. Even if Black people couldn't always participate in it because they redlined us out and did things and Jim Crowed us out of getting it. But at least it was a little more equal then. But of course, now it's become crazy. So I call him Little Hitler because he's creating policies like that. But once you gerrymander things, when the corrupt parties on both sides don't do enough to expand the voices of people, this is what you get. And this is definitely true in the Confederacy. And I call it the Confederacy because that's what it is. All these southern states that refused to expand Medicaid, even North Carolina took 10 years, lost millions and millions of dollars, and it cost hundreds of thousands of lives just for a political point. That is not something that regular people want. Again, if you do any poll today and ask people, do they want universal publicly funded health care? So like in Canada, you take your little car and you just go to the doctor and you don't pay any money out of pocket. More than half of the country will say yes, 70% at polls, including Republicans. So this isn't a Democratic or Republican thing. Because our Congress is full of millionaires, they don't vote for what the people want. Just like most people at poll after poll after poll wants reproductive health care that includes abortion rights. But that doesn't seem to matter because you wouldn't codify it in law almost 50 years later. And now you're crying, oh, why did it happen? Well, it happened because you didn't do anything to fix it.
Right.
That's why.
That's right.
You're not wrong there.
No, ma'am. And that is just hardcore facts because it wasn't codified. Because I didn't understand how all of that happened. And it's like we're always.
We had 50 years to take care of that, and we didn't. So it's like you gotta hold that L. You gotta hold it.
They've been telling us forever that this was what they wanted to do. It shouldn't have been a shock, right? It shouldn't.
No, but that's what I'm saying. Like the Republicans have been brazen about their plan.
Yes.
And here's the thing: like, okay, these white women that are going along with this nonsense. Guess what? The Republicans ain't looking out for them either.
But not all of them. That's why in Kansas, which is a Republican state, they didn't vote to get rid of abortion rights. In South Carolina, 5 Republican women said, okay, that's a step too far. And they didn't let it happen. So, it's not always.
Maybe they're probably getting hip to the game. That may be it. But a lot of these white women who've aligned themselves with the Republican Party and what they're doing, it's like, no, in the end, they're not looking out for you either.
Right. No, I agree. But I think sometimes we can align with all kinds of people if we agree on certain things.
Well, no, but that's where strategizing and organizing comes into play.
But
that's why strategizing and organizing is so important.
But we can't align with oligarchs that hoard cash that says we can't have nice things like schools and healthcare and housing and transportation. Why do we keep electing those people and people that support them?
I don't know. I'm exhausted.
It's so funny you said because as y'all may or may not know, there's a lot going on in New York City, and one of the complaints is about Mayor Adams. And people are like, well, why did he get elected? It's like, well, I mean, we had ranked choice voting. People had choices. I mean, like in my case, I voted for him in the general election, but not during the primary. And I mean, as far as mayor goes, nothing to write home about. But the bottom line is we had like 10 candidates on the Democratic side running. I mean, so it's not like, and we have campaign finance, the campaign finance board here in New York. So they do have public financing. So it's not like the candidates didn't get their voices heard. They had platforms. They had means to get their messages out. Just that Eric Adams is the last one standing.
They still run in a corrupt Democratic Party.
Well, I think the issues that we're facing, and I've said this on your show before, Pam, New York is not this bastion of liberalism that some people seem to think it is.
Yeah, we know. We
We've had this discussion before. There are pockets of conservatism. You just gotta know what to look for and where to look for. But it's here in New York.
But what I would say is in places like that where you do have a subway system that they haven't like done enough to keep the infrastructure up. Even though all these cities and most major cities are run by the Democratic Party. So the fact that they're all having issues, okay, that's on them. But I'm saying is that you can make a choice about how you spend your money. So there was a proposal at one point to add more cops to the subway system, to arrest people jumping the turnstile, not paying a fare. The easier, instead of hiring people to arrest poor people who can't pay the fare, just make it free. Use the money to make transportation free. Rich people are riding in their limos and everything. People that need to get to their job need to run the subway. So it's how we choose to spend our money. So we could choose to spend money.
Well, here's the thing, mass transit, even though I have the option of, I don't own a bike, but technically I can ride a bike or drive a car. I don't own a car. So mass transit is and getting around my foot are my modes of transportation. Exactly. And in New York, making it free, it'll be a good idea in theory. I don't think it's going to work in reality, and I'll tell you why. During the height of the pandemic, they made the buses free. You still had to pay for the subway.
Yeah.
This is during the height of the pandemic.
They were printing money during the pandemic. They could have made it all free. And then you take some money out of those cops shooting people. They don't need so many of them, and make transportation free. It's a matter of priorities. Do we prioritize housing for people that are homeless, or do we prioritize housing for investors making money?
Here's the thing, Dr. Mia. I like free stuff as much as the next person, but the reality is somebody's got to pay. So if you want to make it free, okay, but here's the thing: if you want to make things free, who's paying these bus drivers? Who's paying the conductors? Who's paying the train dispatchers? Who's paying the tower operators? That much. Somebody's got to pay for all that.
How much you
spend
on police in New York City?
And again, I say this as someone.
How much money do you spend on the police in New York City?
Way more than we should.
Okay, so take some of that money and give it to transportation and make it free. So here's your money. Okay? I'm saying, if you want universal health care, let's close down
you're
all
talking
these
like they can
bases
swing
all over the world.
a magic wand and it can be done.
I ain't a magic wand. I'm telling you how it can be done. But it's
listen, I've been riding the subways for more than 30 years. I would love for it to be free. I really would. But realistically, again,
taking the money out of the police force and put it in transportation. I mean, you got to advocate for what you want instead of saying it can't be done.
You know what?
That's not what I'm saying at all.
I'm not going to say no to that, because you know what happened during the pandemic, and then we've got to wrap it up.
Yeah.
We the federal government lifted over 10 million children out of poverty with the child care credit. And they got boosted in income, these parents. And then we, even in Durham, we did a program where we gave people who were formerly incarcerated an income just to get them going. And do you know there was nobody going back to jail because they had extra money?
Universal UBI.
And so here's the other thing. I had the president and CEO of the Prevent Child Abuse North Carolina was on, and she told us, and it just hit me like a ton of rocks. She said I asked her if she was the fairy godmother, what would she give all children? She said, I would give them their parents as an income that was livable. She says, because when we do that, we know statistically that child abuse cases and neglect go way down. A whole lot of things.
Are we talking about reparations at that point, though?
Yeah, well, but see, I was thinking about that. I said, isn't that interesting? Then she said, you have to understand that the reason why we have such a pay inequity in our nation is because of how our nation was founded with slavery, where everybody up here got all the money
and land theft and genocide against the indigenous people.
So it's the same crap. So, anyways, guys, I have enjoyed you.
It was so fun.
It has been spirited. It has been enlightening. I hope the audience, I hope you guys, thank you guys so much for participating.
Thanks for having me. I enjoyed the conversation as well.
Thank you.
I did. And Rohima, I'm trying to think, when we were in high school, were you this talkative?
Oh, well, I was already a socialist back then, though. I was in a student coalition against racism.
Yeah, you were.
And a Young Socialist Alliance. So I was already an activist because it was already bad then, and it's 10 times worse now. That was before Reagan.
Well, here's the thing. I do think a third party is going to eventually rise to power. I mean, judging by Dr. Mia's comments, and she's not alone with her unhappiness with both parties. I do think, I would like to see a third party come along, a viable, realistic third party. I would like to see that.
People had the courage to vote for them. That's it. That's how you make it viable.
Frederick.
But like I asked you before, Dr. Mia, where is your presence on the local level? What policies are you enacting? What ideas are you bringing to the table?
I told you
on a local level, never mind national, just on a local level.
We're about to run candidates, but it took us lots of money to fight the Democratic parties who try to illegally keep us off the ballot.
Yeah.
Well, let the voters decide. That's my position on that. Put everybody, whoever wants to run, they go on the ballot. Let the voters decide. Just like with the 2020 race, we had a whole bunch of people in the primary.
That's why they make laws to prevent us from being on the ballot.
No, but just like with the 2020 primaries, you had like 10, 20 people running. And realistically, most of them didn't have a chance, but the voters made their voices known, and it got weeded out. They separated the wheat from the chaff. As the primary started, especially once the primary started, just before Buttigieg and Klobuchar and all of them dropped out and backed Biden. And I'll be honest with you, that has the makings of a backroom deal, but. Yeah, you didn't hear that
was orchestrated.
All right, guys. Listen, we're gonna say goodnight. It's late. It's after 9. It's 11 minutes after 9.
I appreciate that. That some of us got to go to bed not too long from now.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Ken and Latrice and Pam.
Continue to stay safe, everyone.
Yeah, definitely. And vote.
Thank you. And
yes.
You start thinking about how you're gonna vote. That's what this show is all about. All right. Peace out.
Bye.
Okay, bye-bye.